Let me just double check and check our Twitter to make sure everything is hooked up and good to go. But
Cool.
Yeah, looks like we're live. Sweet. So as we kind of wait for people to trickle in, how's your day been going so far, Peter?
It's been good, got to sleep in a little bit more today. Yesterday was a bit of a hectic day trying to, keep everything up and running and, make sure things are as stable as they can be. There are a few more issues that, I'm trying to get through today, but otherwise, honestly, just, I guess, excited for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Super Bowl's at 6, right?
I think so, yeah. So
Okay,
yeah.
very nice. So lots of builders this weekend that are I thought Super Bowl weekend would be a bit quieter for people wanting to build their projects, but it's been the busiest weekend to date. Do you wanna kind of like talk a little bit about that, Peter? Like what we've been seeing on our end over the last couple of days?
Yeah, it's been incredible, honestly, and like we've loved to see kind of just the general support and excitement out there about our product.
Yeah.
I think we honestly, I forget, the numbers change kind of hour by hour, but I think we've seen something like probably, I don't know, like 20 times, something like 10 to 15 times the usage that we saw like before kind of Friday. So it's really just like kind of exploded, and it's exciting because it's obviously doing this hackathon here, but it's also a lot of people that are maybe kind of hearing about us just kind of from tangentially, like kind of from either content that people are starting to post about us, which is super exciting to see what kind of the I guess like the ways that everyone is kind of discovering our product, and also just like I guess I don't know. It's just really cool to see. I think just like the kind of the love and the support, even though things kind of are unstable because we've had this massive growth, but people are still kind of pushing through it and really figuring out a way to kind of love the product.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really cool too, that like as so many users come on, you go through this little period of like a little bit of bugginess, but then a couple days later, the product gets like, 10 times better, and that kind of cycle continues. So it's really cool to see as these kind of flows happen, that the tool just gets better and better and better, and people get, more and more in love with the product as they use it because it's gone through that stress testing and iteration. And I feel like we're in a pretty good spot now where all of that's really coming together. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Honestly, one of the things that like we really pride ourselves on, the kind of engineering team, is just how quickly we kind of ship things. And yeah, I mean, I think that, as you mentioned, we previously had, a spike in usage, not as big as this one. And there were a lot of things that we did to kind of improve things, as well as honestly just like feedback, not just about stability and kind of scalability, but in terms of just like the user experience, kind of improving, adding new features, right? Kind of improving the AI. And then like, now we've had another spike and it's kind of new things that have come up, but we definitely pride ourselves in like fixing things super quickly. And honestly, like a lot of the issues that we saw from the beginning of the spike are already kind of fixed. We got through them. There are a couple more that we still have to kind of just quickly patch up, but honestly, within 24 hours, we should be all smooth sailing.
Yeah, amazing. And just seeing some people join us on our YouTube streams and on our Twitter streams. So hello to everybody. Hey, Macro, Protocol, Mahad, and Lakshay. Thanks so much for joining us today. And if you're on Twitter, send us a message in chat and make sure, like, let us know that you can actually hear us and actually see us. And we're really excited to help everybody today. The idea with these office hours is that our CTO Peter, and then we've also had Mickey on as well. We want to help you guys with your projects, and we want to make sure that everybody kind of has the right resources and the tools that they need to make really, really cool TempoBuilds projects and be able to submit them. Just a quick reminder of kind of what is going on with TempoBuilds for anybody that has just joined us late. I think we've had like 75 or so people just pop in like the last kind of day or two for TempoBuilds, which is really exciting. But just to get you guys up to speed, TempoBuilds is open until tomorrow, February 10th at 8 p.m. EST. So that's kind of the deadline for submission. A bit of a recap on how to submit. You just have to post your builds on Twitter using the hashtag TempoBuilds. Our team, the Tempo team, will take a look and kind of scour all of Twitter for the top 10 best projects. And then we're going to actually post our own thread of those builds. So the entire community can vote on those builds, and then of course the top 3 projects with the most likes on Twitter /X get the top 3 prizes with over $2,000 in prizes that we're giving away. And yeah, we also have a couple of like superlative prizes. So we have some fun ones. My favorite one is like the best meme app, but we also have the best SaaS app, as well as the most beautifully designed app. So if you're kind of gunning for those categories as well, really excited to see those. Those will be chosen kind of by the Tempo team itself. Yeah, seeing a couple of things in chat. A quick question from Lakshay. Yeah, feel free to go for it. Just like send all your questions in chat. I think sometimes, especially like kind of in the Discords and the Twitters, we get a ton of messages, and we're working really hard to kind of make sure we're up to date in responding to all of those. But you can kind of guarantee that we answer your questions if you send them, especially right now in the live streams, because we're kind of right there. So sweet, looks like we got our first question, and I'll pass this to you, Peter, but it's, can Tempo input Figma prototypes and create on top of it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually like perfect question. We released this feature. I think this was, Josh, maybe like a week and a half ago or something like that. Or maybe it was just a week ago. I don't quite remember, but we have a Figma plugin. So you can actually install the Tempo Figma plugin on your Figma canvas. And then you can actually basically select any piece inside of Figma and then click generate, and it'll actually port over that, like, whether it's a frame or it's like a specific component, into Tempo. And that's like, it's perfect. You can kind of do that multiple times, right? So like you can imagine you're pulling in all these various components, and it creates a storyboard for each one. If you kind of, the first one will create a new project, and then you can kind of select that project to then, basically port new components and new frames into it. And then you have all of those frames, and Figma, obviously the representation is, kind of the design, kind of the vector graphic representation, but it actually converts and writes code for you. So everything that once it shows up in Tempo looks like Figma, but it's kind of real React code. So yeah, great question.
Yeah, and just to kind of add on to that, I've seen a couple of folks use the Tempo plugin, and one kind of tip that I'd have if you're using it is try to kind of start with smaller components, as opposed to like, if you've designed an entire app, kind of like, many pages, many features, I wouldn't try to import that entire Figma file kind of all in one click. I'd break it down by a bit more simpler components, and that way you're able to kind of add functionality and, kind of bring that to life, instead of giving the AI a little bit too much. If you try to import like 20 pages of an entire app all at once, it probably won't do as well with that. But, maybe in the future, maybe in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, it'll get there. But just kind of a tip and trick for now.
Yeah. And I'll kind of add to that. I think that, Josh, that's a really good point for, in general, like kind of tips on one kind of our first tip for how to work with AI is, AI is magical, but it's not like an all-knowing, kind of being, right? Like, think of it as basically just like a really, really smart human, right? And that like, or developer, right? And so, you wouldn't ask someone, like, give them an entire app and be like, hey, build this whole thing, right? So as you're kind of developing your app, right, like try to break it down into pieces, right? So like, hey, I'm going to work on this specific form right here. I'm going to work on this button, this like, I'm going to add a modal, take it step by step. And then in that way, like AI can do a much better job in general of kind of hitting the mark in terms of what you want.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe we can talk about a couple of other points. I just saw your comment come in from Mahad. I haven't tried Tempo yet, but I surely will be trying it tomorrow. Let's see how it goes. I have to build a very complex website. So maybe we can talk about like a couple of like tips and tricks, especially when you're trying to build a bit more of a complex project. One of the visions for what Tempo is building for, and kind of why we built the tool that we built, is we want people to be able to create production ready, software products, not just kind of, small things that you might want to work on a weekend, although you certainly can do that as well. But we want to make kind of code bases that are scalable and code bases that can work into production. So one of the tidbits that I'll share, especially for folks that are a little bit more new to development, definitely use the GitHub integration. I think it's amazing to make sure that for anybody who's not very familiar with GitHub, in kind of total like layman's terms, it's basically a way to help you have kind of really good version control and version management of the code that you're writing. So let's say, for example, you have a functioning application and you want to try and add some new functioning on top of it. Maybe you want to add some really strong search and filtering or something to your app. You want to make sure that you have kind of a copy of that application stored somewhere. And in this case, we're going to kind of store it on GitHub, so that when you make these additions, you can kind of merge that into the original one and not kind of worry about breaking your whole project and not having anything to go back to. That's a functioning project. So especially when you're making really complicated things, definitely use the GitHub integration. We also have launched like a new built-in version control. But yeah, those two kind of are really, really go-to features, especially as the things you're trying to build get more complex. But yeah, Peter, anything else that you would say on that note for building
Yeah,
complex
absolutely.
projects?
And kind of with that Git integration, like the first step is you connect and create a new repo. But then afterwards, as you continue working on your app, right, when you go to that Git tab on the left of the app, there'll be like a little badge. It'll have like a little number in it, right? It's the number of files that have been changed. Definitely try to type a message and commit. Basically, create checkpoints. A commit is essentially like a checkpoint for in Git essentially, and that basically helps you kind of always be able to go back to a certain point where things are working really well, especially with a really large app. The issue is that often the AI can start making changes that kind of maybe help with one part but break with another part of the app, and it's difficult to go back to, let's say, to get it to kind of focus in, and let's say if it messes up, to like kind of go back to that point where it was it was working well before. Creating those checkpoints helps to just even for yourself to manage the project, just always have a point that you can go back to. And I'll add as well, kind of behind the scenes, kind of how it works. We also kind of in terms of how we've built our AI, it prioritizes basically the files that have been recently changed since the last checkpoint, right? And so that actually, again, creating those checkpoints helps a lot, because if, let's say, you were working on the login form and now I don't know, some hypothetical app, you're moving over to like the calendar view and you're working on that. If you create a checkpoint and you start working on the calendar view, then the AI will kind of know, it'll have more information to say that, okay, you've only been making changes to the calendar view since the last checkpoint. So like it'll be able to focus in and make its changes there rather than kind of jumping around and maybe accidentally making a change to the login form as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I just wanted to share something really quickly I think it only shares in the YouTube chat, but for those who are joining us on Twitter as well, I just shared our developer kind of documentation. And this is kind of for, non-technical or newer users, kind of like a user guide, kind of helps you understand how to use the app, some of the best practices, how to kind of like get the most out of the application itself. So I just posted it in the YouTube live stream chat. But if you're on Twitter and you don't have access to that, you can also get it inside of the app. So if you go to any one of your canvases, there's kind of an information panel on the left side of any project. If you click into that, you can find our user guide and our developer documentation as well. But again, it kind of helps you with some of those best practices. We're still certainly building it out. So there's a lot more to come and a lot more kind of detail that will go into those guides to help you with more complex projects. But that is kind of one of the things we're so focused on right now, is like, I think people have seen all the different tools that are out there for, building with AI, and they're kind of hitting a lot of errors as the projects get more and more complex. So kind of our laser focused goal right now over the next couple of weeks is to make sure that people can build like really, really complex, really, really crazy projects. And we love seeing that like people are actually building like SaaS software and that like going to market with projects that they built on Tempo. Just over this weekend, one of the hackathon builds was somebody who's actually creating a really robust email verification kind of platform that cross-checked it with a couple of different APIs that did email verification, and it was for creators. So they were actually making sure that the emails were correlated to real companies that had already sponsored past videos. So they would kind of query all of those past videos. So yeah, I'm probably not explaining it super well, but it was a really, really cool product. And I could definitely see a bunch of creators using that. And it was actually built all in one day using Tempo. So that was really, really cool to see that kind of come to life in front of my eyes, basically. Yeah, just checking the chat really quick. Abdullah is asking if we can re-explain the announcement. Kind of in short, I shared that our hackathon is ending tomorrow at 8 p.m. EST. So anybody who registered got a free pro account on Tempo Labs, which is super hype. Like we're really excited to be able to share that and get everybody on Tempo and kind of lower that barrier to entry and show people how cool the tool is, kind of in a very low commitment way. And then we're seeing a ton of people just absolutely run away with that and build really, really cool stuff. So just wanted to announce that the hackathon ends tomorrow at around 10. You still can register. We're still working on giving accounts to people that have just registered. It might take a couple of hours or two to kind of get that done. But for everybody who is already registered, you should already have your pro account. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Especially would love to hear from folks that have like made some progress in your hackathon builds, and maybe you're experiencing like some issue or some roadblock that you've hit into. That's kind of just part of development. Like hitting issues is like kind of the core of development, but of course we want to kind of limit that as much as possible and help you guys out with that. So Jeremy is saying didn't get your pro account yet. Okay, definitely send a DM. If you're on our Discord, send me a DM. Just I'm like Josh at Tempo, I think, on Discord. And then I'll also probably just like reach out to you. Sometimes, for example, if people shared their GitHub instead of their email on the forum, like we might not have been able to do it. So yeah, just send me a quick DM. I'll make sure we get you sorted out, Jeremy. Yeah, same with you, Lemmy, as well. We'll make sure that happens. There was like a couple of emails that like, for example, if your account wasn't created in Tempo, we weren't able to give you an account because the account wasn't created yet. So there's a couple of small errors where a handful of people weren't able to get their accounts. But if you just reach out, I'll reach out to you, Lemmy and Jeremy, especially because you guys commented. Thanks so much for doing that. Yeah, we'll make sure that you guys get your accounts and can have, I think, over 24 hours more to build. So there's certainly enough time to build something really, really cool. Yeah. As we kind of wait for more questions, Peter, would love to get like an understanding of what are some of the things that people can expect down the pipeline of what we're working on and what we're building at Tempo.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of, there's some things that, it's funny, the last live stream we did, I asked if Mickey wanted to kind of give kind of a teaser of the next big feature he's going, we're gonna release, but and he kind of wanted to keep it a little more secret under wraps. But I will say that maybe some of the other features that there's one very, very exciting feature that's coming out this week, but otherwise, like I think the goal is over the next 2 weeks we're going to do a lot of work to basically truly realize that vision of having Tempo build not just kind of simple software or like hackathon weekend projects, but like true. And it's also, like Josh, like you mentioned, there are some people that are managing to build like really, really amazing, powerful production grade apps, but there will be way more features in order to actually realize that vision. And a lot of that is going to be around helping everyone use the kind of Kanban board, like essentially actually use it to its kind of full potential, right? I know a lot of people right now are building in kind of a single canvas. There are a lot of tools that we're going to release to basically help you break down your project and kind of split it out across, let's say, like multiple tickets, and then a lot of work to basically help merge the work between those tickets, right? Which helps you essentially break down your work. As you're getting into like a very large, complex application, you might spend, let's say a couple of hours on just like one particular feature, right? Just to get it really polished, really production grade. And so, being able to split that out into separate canvases actually goes a very long way in terms of kind of really pushing that project forward. So there's going to be a lot of cool stuff there. There are a lot of things that we're going to release around, we have a wait list right now for, basically connecting your own repo that you can bring in. We've slowly let some people in and kind of connected their repos and got them set up, but we're going to like really start rolling through that wait list very quickly and eventually basically just have everyone automatically be able to kind of sign up and connect your own repo. That's really like the true kind of vision, I think, of what we're going to do. So that's also very exciting. But yeah, a lot of, I'd also say kind of a lot of very cool integrations that we're going to release soon as well. So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff coming down.
Yeah, sweet. So we also have a question from Daniel, and maybe Peter, if you can share screen, this would kind of be helpful. But I think, yeah, folks would love kind of a better idea of how to use that GitHub integration and kind of understand the checkpoint that you mentioned earlier about kind of saving your projects in the version. So yeah, I would love if you can kind of take a second and show us around that.
Sure, yeah. So I'll kind of share my screen here. So let me see which one this is. This one right here. All right.
And I think I got to let you on. There you go. I think we're good.
All right. Am I all good?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, this is kind of an app. I very briefly worked on a Tempo. I was kind of a little upset about my performance in the video that we made a few months ago when push up. But so I started building kind of a quick little fun app, just kind of a landing page. But basically, you can see here, this kind of tab right here on the left tab, this Git settings. This is what we call kind of the Git tab. And so if I click on this, you can see that there are 8 changes that I've already made to this project, right? So I've chatted with the AI and it's kind of made some of these changes for me. So when I talk about this checkpoint, right, and this is what you click on, when you click on this, you might see something a little bit different. You'll see maybe like there's going to be one button at the top and it's just going to say connect repo. That's when you haven't created a repo yet. And you could just really easily like click that button, make sure that you have that kind of Git app installed. There'll be the instructions on that modal. And then you could just kind of push to GitHub from there. And then after that, that creates the first checkpoint. So I've already created the first checkpoint. But, and again, when I say checkpoint, commit, it's kind of the same word. Commit is the Git term for, kind of what is essentially a checkpoint. So here I have these changes. And so I'm going to type in some sort of message, let's say, I don't know, initial styling. I think I made a couple styling changes in this project I've been working on already. So initial styling, I'll commit. So this is now going to basically create that checkpoint. Give it a quick sec. There we go. And so now basically, if I make any other changes, right? So let's say I go in here and I'm just going to, so I'll change this to, I'm actually going to make a manual change. I know everyone's been working a lot on kind of the AI changes, but I always love showcasing the styling panel where you can kind of tweak things on your own, especially if you're someone who's like very design oriented. So let me see, maybe I'll make this text a little bit more. And I'm not a designer, so whenever I do this, but I don't know, maybe like a little blue, perhaps.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, that's not too bad. I don't know. These colors are awful, but just to kind of showcase this that change there. All right, let me see if actually, sorry, I have a little bit of a hiccup here. I'll just do blue here. It's funny. This might be some of the little syncing issues that we've been having. All right, I will just make the change in the code here myself. So yeah, I'm surprised I'm not. There we go. Okay, this was just took a little bit of time to load. But I mean, as you're working on your project, this might not live load. But as you go and make a bunch of changes, you'll see this kind of these changes pop up in this Git tab. So you'll see here now, I've just made another change, and there are 2 kind of things I can do. So I can obviously create a new checkpoint commit, and then there's this button called clean and discard. Now, be very careful kind of pressing this because this will basically erase all of your changes up to the previous checkpoint. So it's definitely useful if you kind of get into this, maybe a little bit of a rabbit hole or some sort of like, basically just like to a point where like, hey, I just want to go back to my previous checkpoint. This like automatically resets that. It's a really easy way to go back to that, but it will erase all of your progress since that last checkpoint. So be careful actually clicking that. So yeah, I mean, it's basically kind of, those are all the features involved with that. And yeah, I mean, kind of, I think just a very useful thing for people to do.
Yeah. And maybe if you also want to show like the built-in Tempo kind of version history that we just launched as well.
Yeah, definitely. So this is right here. So right under the Git tab, there's this history. So this is now, it's basically, I think, a similar idea, but every single change that you make, right? So, we kind of mentioned, here I have some AI changes actually that have been made. Like these will basically, like for every every change you make to your project, you're going to have one of these kind of versions that are created. And you can always go back and click restore to go back to a previous version, or you can and then once you kind of restore, you can then go to like a newer version as well. So it's basically kind of like a history, essentially, a little bit like much more fine grained. It's kind of change by change. So this is also something that you can definitely use, instead of this checkpoint system or the kind of Git system to kind of version control.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully that answers your question, Daniel. Like if you have any other thoughts or any other kind of help and support you need on that kind of checkpoint version control type thing, definitely send us a message. We're happy to answer that as well. But we have a question coming in from Hans. I'll give this one for you, Peter. Is there a possibility that you guys go down the game creation route?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's someone, and I personally haven't built a web game before, so I'm not familiar with these libraries. But I think someone actually on the Discord asked this question, and they mentioned that there was a library for this. So, it's funny, like I would ask AI, how to kind of do this, but you can create games in web. So there are libraries out there that basically help, you can basically build an actual video game, like in an actual React app, right? So traditionally video games maybe built more kind of in specialized, obviously like kind of Flash games were kind of the original web games, right? Or you kind of have more like, your kind of standalone or actual like, WebGL kind of games, but you can now build games in React and control them. And, there's some libraries to do that. I really want to find this library. Maybe Josh, if you want to go over a couple other questions, and I want to find this library for Hans here because it's in our Discord.
Yeah, of course. Sounds good. Like, I think one of the things I'll kind of share as we're still on this topic of like, can you do things on Tempo that's maybe not kind of in the basic, like the base repository that it's called, kind of like the base set of code that is built into Tempo? And the answer is absolutely, right? There's like a lot of things that you can do that go beyond kind of the scope that the basic kind of repository allows you to do. And you can do that with a lot of things, for example, like NPM packages. You can add things into the Tempo library. And if you're not very familiar, we actually do have that in our documentation as well. So kind of that link that I had sent earlier on the YouTube chat and the documentation that you can find on any canvas, you go to the left-hand side, there's a little eye in a circle, like the information kind of tab. You can go right to our documentation. It explains how you can add libraries into the Tempo Labs kind of projects to add some more functionality. Like, let's say you want some really cool components that have these really cool animations, but they're in some other library, and you want to bring them into Tempo Labs, you absolutely can do that as well. But yeah, Peter, were you able to find it?
Yeah, it's called 3JS, so 3.js. It's a JavaScript 3D rendering library. So, you can work with AI. AI knows how to kind of build with it, and you can definitely build a game with that. Yeah. And I guess, Josh, like I know we're already kind of at 27 minutes and stuff, but I wanted to share a couple of things that I think would be super valuable for people.
Sure. Yeah.
Before we kind of go through maybe a couple of other questions. So I know, and by the way, I'll kind of, I know a lot of people in the Discord have been mentioning specifically this issue, or once you start a new project, you get this PRD error not found. We're definitely going to have that fixed very, very soon. But in the meantime, just want to kind of show you some cool things that are helpful in general in terms of how to work with the PRD. So let me kind of share my screen again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what a lot of people don't know is that you can actually use the AI to help you kind of write and edit your PRD, right? So for example, I can obviously ask the AI to build, like, let's say I want to build a, once you click register now, there's a register modal. I can ask the AI to build that. But if I want to, let's say, plan it out a little bit beforehand, actually use this PRD here, it's blank, right? But even if you had a PRD here, I can actually ask the AI to edit the PRD. And I think the key thing is you want to just make sure you use the word PRD and kind of mention, like, don't make any changes to the code base, I guess. I mean, sometimes it might not. So I'll say something along the lines of like, create a PRD for a register modal that, opens up when you click register now button. And I'll just say, just in case, make any changes to the code yet. So there you go. You can actually see that this AI here can write and edit PRDs directly from the AI chat here, essentially. So essentially, like, you can see that, even if you weren't able to kind of generate that PRD, like, again, that not found error, right? You can still go ahead and talk with the AI and modify and kind of adjust and, basically build out your PRD. And even if you have that initial PRD generated, you can then also chat with the AI to adjust it, right? Like, you read it and you say, hey, I actually don't want this to be in this, or I do want this here. And that can help a lot in terms of then once you actually start building the, that particular feature that you're working on, or that part of the app that you're working on, right? It can really help kind of focus the AI in again. And I think even, like, let's say if you started a project, right? You had your original PRD here that you created when, you first started that project. Now you're like way further along. Consider erasing that PRD. Like, basically, if you don't want to kind of, it's a little bit tough to kind of work with a new canvas. If you were still in the same canvas, consider erasing the PRD and then asking the AI to write a focused PRD for just the particular next change that you're making. And that way you'll be able to, like, focus the AI in on that particular change and make sure that it's going to get it right. So I think that's just kind of a quick tip that I wanted to share. And then 2 other quick tips just in general for this AI chat. So if you do have a pro account, which everyone for the hackathon should have one, and again, mentioning again, if for whatever reason you weren't able to get one, definitely DM Josh, and we will prioritize getting you that account right away.
Yep.
So you can see that there are these 3 kind of icons here up top, and I highly recommend kind of exploring them, understanding how it kind of all works. They're all pretty simple. So the first one on the top right is basically just your chat history. So what you can actually click this plus button to create a new chat, right? And then you can go back and actually see your previous chats and the history of what you were actually doing. This is what I was kind of, basically working on before myself. So, this is just a really useful tool when your chat gets really long. The AI can sometimes, well, one, it'll start kind of using up more tokens. And the second thing is that the AI can start to get a bit confused because you might be talking about something different, but in the beginning of from the beginning of your conversation, but the AI might think it's still kind of one stream of thought. So often I suggest, like, again, when you're moving on to building a new part of your app, like you're done one piece, let's work on another piece, is click this plus button to start a new chat. It'll use up less tokens and, it'll help the AI focus in on that. And then finally, especially for really large projects, this is super useful. There's this gear icon right here. And if you click on it, you'll see that there's this token soft limit. Right now it's set to the maximum amount because that provides the best experience. But as you get like a really large project and you really want to kind of, let's say you really want to maximize, let's say, the tokens that you have available, you can actually reduce this and try. It is a soft limit in the sense that it's not guaranteed that it'll be like 100K, but it does kind of try to, let's say if you move it further down to kind of the lower part of the scale, it'll encourage AI to use fewer tokens. But that being said, like kind of, play around with it, because if you kind of go too low, the results are not going to be as good as if they're all the way at the top. So, so yeah, just kind of, I think 3 things or 4 things I really wanted to kind of share, just as we're kind of coming towards the end.
Yeah, sweet. I think we have one more question, Peter, if we're able to maybe do like a quick 30-second answer, and then we can cap off for today. So we have a question from Mahad. Any possibility you can create node-based systems building pages and connect them with a specific button using nodes?
Interesting. So I'm actually very curious. Like, I guess what I'm imagining is like kind of a drag and drop kind of node routing system. I think there are some tools out there where you can build a website or a web app, and you basically have these kind of like boxes or nodes, and it's kind of like they're interconnected. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that something very similar to that, like, you talk about maybe what's in the roadmap for the next month or so. We are going to release a lot of features to help you kind of organize all of the routes in your app. So this is actually like a very, very, very great point to make. Right now you kind of have your main application. It kind of breaks it down initially, but then you kind of have these floating storyboards, and it might be a bit confusing to figure out the actual flows in like a much more complex application. So yeah, absolutely. It's going to be something that we're going to release probably within the next month, something that just helps you manage all your different routes and states kind of in your app.
Yeah, sweet. Amazing. So I think we can maybe call it there. If there are any other questions that we weren't able to get to, definitely join us on the Discord. We're trying to be as active as we can there over kind of the next 2 days, especially. There's some really good discussions and some really good kind of builder community, people helping each other with their projects going on kind of as we go into this tail end of the hackathon, kind of the grind time of hackathon to get projects done. But thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. We really, really appreciate you guys taking the time, and we'd love to see the amazing projects that will come through, that have come through over the last few days and will come through over the next few weekends. But hope everybody has an amazing rest of your day. If you're watching the Super Bowl, enjoy the Super Bowl. I hope the team that you want to win does win. But yeah, we will see you in the next one, which will be on tomorrow at the same time around 3:00. That'll be kind of like trying to get people to the end and make sure all the projects get tied up and finished. But thanks again, Peter, so much for joining us and for answering our questions. And yeah, we will catch you guys in the next one.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
All right, see you guys.